Okay, so we have been talking about triggers. Okay, so the other day we saw the syntax of the trigger. We have understood the events. We understand the syntax, and we know how to write the trigger, right? Okay. So I'll quickly go back to the example that we were doing on the other day. And in that example, we put a logic before insert and before update. I think we were trying to check the opportunity amount, right? We log into it. Okay, here we are. So we are gonna go back to the trigger that we created. First one, we created it on opportunity. I don't remember exactly which account I was using the other day. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this is the one. Okay, so this is a trigger that we were discussing the other day, right? So trigger O1 on opportunity before insert, before update, same logic we are using. All right. My requirement is what if I want to execute different logics on different events? You may have this kind of requirement. For example, now I say that before insert, I want to check if the amount is 10,000 or greater than that. Before update, I want to check if the amount is 5,000 or greater than that. So, for update for an existing record which is being updated, in that case, up to 5,000 should be allowed. Uh, in case of this thing, in case of insert, minimum amount should be 10,000. All right. So now here what I need to do, I need to use some more context variables. Okay. So one context variable that we used the other day is trigger.new. What does it do? It returns list of um, records and context. Okay. Now, trigger.new basically returns the list of records which are in context. So basically, the records which are being created or which are being updated, okay, before the create happens or before the update happens. Okay, it is that value. The same way, trigger dot hold. This is another context variable. This returns list of records in context. Okay, this is applicable for the records which are being deleted or which are being updated. So this works with delete and update, and this works with insert and update. Okay, so trigger.new basically talks about the records which are being deleted. Okay, sorry, trigger.new works with the records which are being inserted or which are being updated before the insert or update happens. Trigger.delete is talking about the records which are being deleted or which are being updated. Got it? Then we have trigger.size. This context variable will return the number of records in context. Then you have trigger.isInsert. This is a boolean. This will return true if it's a insert trigger, or you can say if trigger was fired due to insert operation. The same way you have trigger you have trigger dot is update. So this will check if the trigger was fired due to an update operation. We have trigger dot delete, which will check if the trigger was fired due to a delete operation. We have trigger dot undelete. Then we have trigger dot before. And we have trigger dot is after. So these are all the triggers that we have, like context variables that we have to check which operation actually fired the trigger, right? Okay. Now, these all context variables basically return a true or false. These are all boolean. The return type is gonna be true or false. Trigger.new and trigger.old are gonna return your list of records in the context, right? This is basically gonna return you an integer, how many records. Now, if I want to, execute this logic, basically what do I need to do? I'm saying that if a new record is being created, then minimum amount should be 10,000. And if a record is being updated, then the amount should be 5,000. So all that you have to do is you just have to check if the trigger was fired because of an insert operation, which means it's a new record. So if I can write this code here, check if trigger dot is new, then check then amount should be less than 10,000 or greater than 10,000. If the trigger dot is update, then amount should be greater than 5,000. That's all we have to do. So if I use this context variable, my life becomes very easy. So what I need to do, I just need to write this logic. If trigger dot is insert and o dot amount less than 10,000 throw error, else if trigger dot is update and o dot amount is less than 5,000, then throw error. So that's it. That should work good. So for an insert operation, it will check if the amount is less than 10,000, then only it's gonna throw error. If for an update operation, if it finds the amount is less than 5,000, then it's gonna throw error. And please save it. Okay. Okay. So if I try to create a new account, a new opportunity, I enter an amount 8,000. Try to save it. I get this error. Very small opportunity. All right. That's the error. But if I make it, because this is an insert operation, so anything which is less than 10,000, it's throwing error right now. If I make it 12,000, save it, it got saved. It's a new record, value is more than 10,000, it got saved. Now let me click on edit, make it 7,000 again. Do you think it's gonna throw error now if I try to save it? Do you think it's gonna throw error? Okay, so let me try saving this. 7,000, now it got saved. Why? Earlier it was not saving. The reason is pretty simple, because in an update operation, right now when you edit, an update operation is happening, right? In an update operation, I have said that if it is up to 5,000 allowed, there should not be any problem, right? So that's how it is. Got it? So this is how you can use these context variables. All right. So now we can actually use triggers to do a lot of things, right? So we have understood that we can actually, write different logics on different operations. we can retrieve the values of the records which are being which are in the context. Now, using that, we can actually do a lot of things using trigger. So it's not just that you will just be doing the checking values or validations. That's one part. But sometimes let's say you have a requirement that when an account is created, you just want to go ahead and create an opportunity automatically. When an account is created, and an opportunity should be created. Let's say this is the requirement. Then what will you do? If I say that an account should be created, and the moment someone creates an account, I want an opportunity automatically to be created. Which trigger operation should you create the opportunity at? What event should I use? So first question is, on which object should I go and create that trigger? That's my first question.
On the account.
On the account or on opportunity?
I think on the account, because you are going to create an account. So when it's created before insert, because we'll be entering the values into the account, then in that block you are going to create an opportunity.
Okay, so the first thing is that the trigger will be on account, because I want the trigger to be fired taking reference from an account, right? The reference point is coming, or the hint is coming from account when an account is being created, then, right? So trigger is going to be on account. Always try and understand this, that okay, fine. DML of which object is gonna fire the trigger. Here account is created. When I say when account is created, definitely an account creation is gonna fire the trigger, which means the trigger has to be on account. Okay. What event should I go and create opportunity in? So ideally, I should write something like this. Trigger T1 on account. And what event should I use here? Before insert?
No, after insert.
Why? Why not before insert?
Because after creating the account, then it should automatically create an opportunity. So before creating the account, how it can be possible? Because it clearly after account is created, then opportunity should create automatically. That's why it should be after insert.
What will be the problem if I put before insert here?
Before insert is basically used to just for validation.
Validation or passing values to that particular record, right? Anything else
Yeah,
which
if you
needs, yes, correct. So anything else which needs to be done on any other record. So first of all, there is a record in context, right? Now, before insert is the position where this record itself is not stable. It is still in the stage where it does not know whether it is actually going to get into the database or not. Correct? So first thing that we have to do is, if we have to pass some value to it, if we have to do some validation on this, if we have to check whether all the values here are correct or not, that's the first point. Correct? So before insert, before update kind of an operation is always gonna be, to check this record, to assign some values to this on this record, and then go ahead and uh, commit this record to the database. Fine. So before insert, we'll check all these things in this record and it will get committed to the database. Only once it is committed to the database, then other records, like when I say, okay, create an opportunity. So before an opportunity can be created under this account, first of all, this account has to get committed to the database, right? Now this account gets connected to the database, and after that, the opportunity can be created, or anything else that you want to do. Whatever you want to do, apart from doing this, any other thing that you want to do, you will need to do this from here. Okay, so first of all, the record in context needs to get a stable position, and then it should be able to make changes in the other records. Okay, now I hope that is clear with everyone. I have one more question. So you say this should happen after insert. Okay, can I also say after update here? If I say after update also, then what will happen? And can I say after update event also here? Yes or no?
No,
Why?
because once you insert it, it goes to the database. Then once it goes to the database, automatically the opportunity is created.
Hmm.
So opportunity is already there. Then
So if you say after update, then basically what will happen? Every time someone updates the record, after updating, it is again going to create an opportunity. Correct? I just want the opportunity to be created once. If you put after update here, then what will happen? Then again and again, it will keep on creating the opportunity, which we don't want. Right? So that's the logic here. So after insert should be fine. Got it? So that's the logic which we have to keep in mind. I mean, you just have to keep things simple. You just have to see that whenever there is a new, what do you call it? Wherever there is a new record which is being inserted and I have to assign some value or I have to check the values, use before triggers. After trigger is required to perform changes in other part of the database, but before that, it's important that this current record has got committed. So for that reason, always after trigger will be used there in that case. Right. Okay. Now there's one more thing that I want you guys to understand here. We yeah, just take this trigger, the one that we have just written. Just go with that. So we have written a loop here. Why are we writing a loop here? Anyone? If you see the code of this trigger, I've written a loop. Why am I doing things in the loop? I've written a for loop here. Any ideas? Why am I doing a for loop?
It's for all the records which you have created. It's not for single record.
But at one time it's actually executing for single record, right?
Yeah.
See, I'll tell you. Basically what happens um, is this concept of bulk trigger. What is a bulk trigger? Bulk trigger is basically a trigger which can handle bulk records. Like currently what we are doing, I'm creating one record. Like if I go to opportunity, I create one record. It's just single record, right? But your trigger should also work when you're trying to upload the data from data loader or from some programming you are actually trying to put multiple records into the system. Then also your trigger should work, right? Then it should not happen that the trigger works for the first record and after that it does not work. It should work for all the records, right? So that's basically the concept of bulk trigger. So how will you handle the bulk trigger? You don't have to do anything here. All the triggers which you write here by default are bulk triggers. Now this trigger is capable of handling multiple records, because see, trigger.new is the list of records which have been created. So no matter if it is 100 or 1000, okay. So I am actually defining a variable O. So it takes one record at a time and checks it, and whatever error has to be thrown or something like that, and then it goes to the second record. So that's the reason the loop has been defined. Now this trigger will work fine for a single record. If there is only one record, the loop will run once. If there are multiple records, the loop will run multiple times, whatever number of records we have, right? So this itself is a bulk trigger, right? So it can actually handle multiple records. So there is no problem. You don't have to write a separate bulk trigger as such, right? So all the triggers by default have to be bulk triggers, and the reason is the trigger.new. Why do we need to always write a for loop here? Because trigger.new itself is a list of records. So I cannot go and say that okay, just go and check trigger.new for amount. Trigger.new will have multiple records. It's a list of records, right? That list can have only one record. That's absolutely fine. Like currently, when we are actually entering the value from here, we are entering one record. So that trigger.new just has one record. That's fine, right? But because it's a list of record, you cannot go. I mean, you might have thought, I do not know people who have written the code or who have tried practicing some. You might have thought, why can't I write trigger.new dot amount? If trigger.new is the record which is being written or which is being created, which is in context, then why can't I do this? Instead of opportunity O is trigger.new, can I not check directly trigger.new.amount is less than 10,000 throw error? But this statement will not make sense because trigger.new is not a single record. Got it? It's a list of records. This is a list variable. Got it? So for that reason, you cannot directly check that thing. You have to go and define a loop here. So we'll have to write something like this. Trigger dot new so here what I'm doing, I'm basically defining a single S object variable which checks the record one by one. Right? Clear? Now let me know if anyone has any other question or doubt. Next thing that we will talk is our asynchronous effects. The other ways of invoking effects, right? So we are going to talk about asynchronous effects. What is asynchronous effects? Asynchronous effects is basically an Apex code that gets executed asynchronously. Asynchronously means does not have to be in sync with the uh, end user's action. Okay, so you don't have to have a record update, or you don't have to have a button click, you don't have to have a page load. It can run asynchronously in the backend. So why do we need these kind of Apex code which should automatically or asynchronously run, which does not is not in sync with the end user action? The reason can be a lot of them, like some code which is a long running code. For example, you have a code which is long running code. You try to execute it now, it cannot execute because the bandwidth is not available. Just try and understand the situation. Now in that case, for example, there is a big code, okay, you try to execute it and the bandwidth is not available, resources are not available because it's again a multi-tenant environment. So if there are multiple things happening for your org, your slightly bulky code might not get executed right now. Then as a user, are you gonna try it again after 1 hour and keep on checking when the bandwidth is available? It's a not very good thing, right? You cannot keep on trying again after half an hour, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You do not know when the bandwidth is going to be available. Or what you have to do, you just have to continuously keep on waiting, keep on trying. So which is not a good practice. So for that reason, what we have certain ways of invoking Apex which can run asynchronously. When the bandwidth becomes available, when the resources are available, it will automatically execute. So you can call that Apex code right now, and whenever the resources become available, it will automatically execute. Okay, so it does not get cancelled if the resources are not available. It actually goes and waits in the queue when the resources become available. Let's say in the evening or in the night when there is no one in the company, no one else is working, resources are there, the code will automatically execute. Right? That's asynchronous Apex. So in asynchronous Apex, there are a few things which we are going to do. The first, which we are going to talk here, is a future method. So future method is exactly what we just talked, a method which can run asynchronously in future. A future method runs in the background asynchronously. Okay, so it will run in the background asynchronously, and it will run in future. So what does future mean here? Future means when the resources become available in future, whenever it becomes, after 10 minutes, after 10 hours, after 2 days. So whenever the resources become available. Okay. You can call a future method for executing long running operations. So any long running operations like database updates, things like this, you can call that as a future method. Small operations like this, updating one or two records here and there, these can be synchronous ones. Right? When an end user is clicking on a record and that record is being updated and your visual force page is getting loaded. These are very small operations, right? And these are all synchronous operations. When a page is getting loaded, there's a get method which executes, right? So there's some Apex code. That get method is synchronous or asynchronous? Or ideally, do you think get method should be synchronous or asynchronous? Anyone? Should it be synchronous or asynchronous?
Synchronous.
And what is the problem if I make it asynchronous? I mean, just think about it. What will be the problem if get method is made asynchronous? When does a get method execute? It executes when the page loads, right? The page loads and get method needs to get some values on the page, right? Now, which means an end user is actually waiting to see the response on the page. You cannot make it asynchronous because you cannot say that end user that okay, this method will run whenever it gets time or whenever it gets resources. You sit and keep on waiting, right? So this cannot be asynchronous. This has to be synchronous. The same way the trigger things, if I'm trying to insert a record now, I cannot say that when someone tries to enter an account, make that asynchronous. Account insert or not insert error, that should be thrown right now. If there is an error, it should be thrown right now. If I'm trying to create an account, that should be created right now, right? So trigger is also synchronous and it has to be synchronous. I cannot make these calls asynchronous, right? So these are high priority things. But long running operations like some sort of data cleansing activity or some data update that you're trying to do, from the backend as a database administrator or something, these are low priority things. These are not the highest priority jobs, and these can be put into asynchronous. Correct? Okay. Any operation you would like to run in its own thread. So usually the low priority things, the big database updates and stuff like that, are done using asynchronous. Okay. So future method is the easiest way. It's a traditional way. Now we have better things, but I still want you to understand the future method. So each future method is queued and executed. So you can actually, while you're creating a method, you can define that method as a future method. Okay. What happens with a future method? What is the difference between a normal method and a future method? A normal method will get executed synchronously on the spot. The moment it is called, it will either get executed or it will get cancelled. But a future method, on the other hand, if it cannot get executed because of the bandwidth or resources not available, it is gonna wait in the queue and execute when system resources become available. Okay, so it is gonna give first priority to the synchronous methods, and it will wait in the queue. Once our synchronous methods are done executing, then asynchronous method will execute. So future method does that. Each future method is going to wait in the queue and execute when system resources become available. To define a future method, you simply need to annotate it with the future annotation. So all that you need to do is, this is what you have to make a method as future. You just have to, you have to use this add future annotation. That's it. So any method with add future annotation becomes a future method. So difference, a future method, if it cannot execute right now, it will wait for the resources to become available. All right. Okay. Methods with the future annotation must be static methods and can only return a void type. Okay. So these methods have to be static methods and they can only return a void type ones. They should not have a return type, basically they should be void methods. And logically correct also, if it has a return type then someone else will be waiting for that return value. Like in get method, there is a return type, the end user is waiting for it. So any asynchronous method has to be void method. It should not return anything. If there is a method which returns anything, you definitely there is something else which is waiting for that response, right? So when some other method or some other user is waiting for the response, you cannot make it asynchronous. You have to then make it synchronous only. All right. So that is the thing. The specified parameters must be primitive data types, arrays of primitive data types, or collections of primitive data types. So in case there is a parameter which is defined in a future method, that parameter can only be primitives. You cannot define S object as parameter in the future methods. Okay. Why we cannot define parameters as objects? What is the problem? So if you are passing a parameter in a future method, for example, if I say add future, and if I define a method public void list of account, you cannot pass S object as parameter for future methods. If you have to pass parameter, that has to be a primitive. Primitive means string, integer, things like that. S object can never be passed as a parameter for future method. Why? What is the reason? Why is it so? The reason is pretty simple. The reason is that this future method, if you see, you know what is the concept of future method? That your future method is gonna execute in future. I mean, if you call it right now, it might execute after 2 hours, right? That's what the concept is. Now what may happen if you pass S object as a parameter, then what will happen? The record value may change between the time when it was called and when it was actually executed. This may happen, right? If I call the future method right now and I pass a few accounts as parameters, and this method gets executed after 2 hours. In the meanwhile, if someone has updated the records which I have passed as parameter, then what will happen? Your method is gonna go back and override the new values. It's gonna again go back and update the records with the old values because those were already passed as parameters, right? Got it? So for that reason, future method cannot have S object as parameter here. S object cannot be defined as a parameter in your future methods. All right? Because of the simple reason, because there is a time delay between the calling of the method and execution. In the meanwhile, S object values can get updated. Someone can go and update. If update happens, then it is gonna definitely make the database inconsistent. So for that reason, if you have to pass parameter in future method, it always have to be the primitives, right? So these are a few challenges with the future method. Though it works, it's a good thing to use, but as you can see, there are few challenges with the future method. All right, like it cannot pass as object as parameter, which makes it a little difficult, right, to use. So yep. So what we are going to do is we are going to continue to discuss on this, on the future method and what is the alternate to future method. Future method is now a little, not that much used. We have got alternate ways of using future methods. So we are going to talk, continue to discuss on the same in tomorrow's session, right?